I'm gonna go,
Open-world games have often associated with AAA games, but nowadays, indie games can also give you an immersive look and an awesome open-world game, like these upcoming games. Hello guys, today we're gonna see the top 15 promising indie open-world games you should watch for 2026 and beyond. We start with BLACKFROST: The Long Dark 2. This game is a sequel to Survival in Coldness called The Long Dark. Unlike the first game, which put you in the cold wilderness, BLACKFROST features the northern industrial city of Harmont. Players will navigate urban environments, towns, and farms, introducing new hazards and scavenging opportunities that are very different from the first game. While the original game focused on the isolation of the quiet apocalypse, BLACKFROST expands the scope to include social survival and deeper RPG mechanics. You can build your own character with custom traits, skills, and even collecting scars that tell the story of your survival over time. The game will also add psychological survival as new mechanic. The game not revealed the release date yet, but it will come to Steam in early access.
You've been waiting 4 long years.
Come another sequel, Breathedge 2 is a space survival game that continues the story of the man facing epic intergalactic problems. The sequel shifts from the relatively linear corridors of the first game to a survival RPG with a much heavier emphasis on sandbox exploration and crew management. One of the most significant changes is the removal of the aggressive item degradation system. Tools and items will no longer break after just a few uses. Instead, crafting an item is a major event, and you can upgrade or disassemble them for parts later. You can now recruit a crew of survivors, including the return of Babe as a navigator. While the first game mostly took place in floating debris, Breathedge 2 features multiple star systems and distinct planets you can land on. Breathedge 2 will come around Q1 2026 for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series XS. As One We Survive is a top-down isometric survival game that blends traditional grid-down survival mechanics with colony management, focusing heavily on a personal narrative set against the backdrop of a post-apocalyptic America. Unlike many survival games that focus solely on the player's endurance, As One We Survive centers on your quest to find medical help and equipment for your sick daughter. You will build and manage your community, where protect your people from danger, and make tough decisions that will determine the fate of your group. The survival mechanic goes beyond hunger and thirst. The game includes complex medical systems like blood infection that requiring specific antibiotics and treatments. The game will come in early access on Q2 2026. Although open-world games often correlate with 3D visuals, 2D games will also give you some masterpieces. Street of Rogue 2 expanded its predecessor, the original level-based roguelike. The sequel transforms the formula into a vast, procedurally generated open-world sandbox RPG. Like its predecessor, you can achieve your goal, toppling a corrupt president, however you want. You can be a traditional soldier, a hacker who never fires a gun, a billionaire farmer who bribes their way to the top, or even a scientist who starts a zombie apocalypse. For the first time, players can drive cars, sailboats, and use high-speed transport to traverse the world. Most of the environment remains fully destructible. If you have ever played game from Larian Studio before Original Sins, you will find familiarity and nostalgia with Sagas of Lumin. Unlike many RPGs where dragons are simple mounts, here they are fully controllable combatants. You can perform high-speed dives, sharp turns, and precision hovering. Combat includes fire-breathing, claw swipes, and biting rival dragons or airships. When you dismount, the game shifts to a skill-based action RPG. You can use traditional melee weapons, elemental spells, and steampunk firearms. Although it's not a fully open world and more like semi-open, the game will promise you a massive floating island for you to explore. Sagas of Lumin will come in early access in Q1 2026. Walled Haven is an upcoming open-world action-adventure game that puts you in a dense, dystopian metropolis inspired by the real-world historical Kowloon walled city. The game looks straight out from 90s Chinese action movie that makes me excited for this game. You can roam freely, discovering hidden dungeons and vertical paths. You will engage in hand-to-hand combat against gang thugs and legendary masters. You can use traditional techniques, environmental objects, and found weapons as part of your arsenal. Much like a traditional RPG, you must train to improve your skills. You can learn new kung fu techniques from masters hidden throughout the city. The game doesn't have a release date yet. Darkwood 2 was officially announced in late October 2025 and become one of the most anticipated open-world indie survival horror title. While the original was developed by Acid Wizard Studio, this sequel will take over by Ice Pick Lodge, the creator behind Pathologic series. Unlike the claustrophobic, dense forests of the first game, Darkwood 2 takes place a few years later in a vastly different environment, the scorched deserts of a dying sea. The sequel retains the core top-down perspective and the punishing day-night survival loop, but it expands the scope into a more seamless open-world experience. While the first game used a distinct 2D art style, early trailers for Darkwood 2 showcase 3D environments and models while maintaining the signature top-down camera and limited field of view mechanic. Alkahest is a first-person action RPG that positions itself as the spiritual successor to the cult classic Dark Messiah of Might and Magic. You do not play as a legendary hero. Instead, you are the youngest son of a minor lord. To earn a name for yourself and secure your family's future, you venture to the Borderlands to investigate a sudden surge in goblin raids. The defining feature of Alkahest is its physics-first approach to combat. Rather than just clicking until an enemy's health bar reaches zero, the gameplay focuses on directional melee strikes and environmental awareness. In a departure from many RPGs, there is no traditional magic, like mana-based spells. In Alkahest, the magic comes from a deep alchemy system. No release date yet, but the game will come to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X and S. Witchbrook is a highly anticipated magical life simulation and social RPG developed and published by Chugglefish, the studio renowned for Starbound. After being in development for nearly a decade since its initial tease in 2016, the game is currently planned for a 2026 release. It takes place in the vibrant, detailed seaside city of Mossport, where players enroll as students at Witchbrook College. The game blends the cozy daily routines of a life sim with the progression of a magical education, drawing heavy aesthetic and tonal inspiration from Studio Ghibli's Kiki's Delivery Service and the whimsical fantasy worlds of Terry Pratchett. The game is planned to release on PC, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch.
When the world feels so vast,
Hela will put you as the tiny paws of a brave mouse who serves as a familiar to a kind witch. Your mission is twofold. Venture into the vast wilderness to forage for rare ingredients to brew a cure, and continue performing small acts of magical community service. The game blends physics-based puzzles with seamless open-world traversal, viewed from a small-scale perspective where common household items and forest debris become massive obstacles or useful tools. One of the most innovative features is the Shade system, designed specifically to make the game's co-op puzzles accessible to solo players. You can create spectral copies of yourself that repeat your last action. Hela will come to PS5 and Xbox X and S near this year.
given little ones.
Alabaster Dawn is a 2.5D top-down action RPG developed by Radical Fish Games, the creators of the critically acclaimed Crosscode. Players take on the role of Juno O'Lira, the outcast chosen, who must cleanse the land of a corruptive shadow known as Nyx, awaken a dormant humanity, and rebuild fallen settlements through a unique system of trade routes and scientific advancement that visually evolves the game world. The game, featuring a fast-paced combat system inspired by titles like Devil May Cry and Kingdom Hearts, that allows players to hot swap between 8 unique weapons and 4 elemental powers, complemented by intricate environmental puzzles.
I write to carry out my duty.
The Legend of Khiimori is an open-world horse-life adventure game that takes a significant leap into a hardcore historical setting. The game is set in a vast, untamed 13th century Mongolia. You take on the role of a courier rider for the Yam, the sophisticated postal system established by the Mongol Empire. Unlike previous equestrian games from this developer, Khiimori leans heavily into survival and historical realism. The experience centers on a deep, system-driven relationship with your horse, featuring realistic equine physics, breeding mechanics to produce superior offspring, and rigorous survival elements where players must manage hunger, thirst, and fatigue for both themselves and their steed. The game will come in 3 March 2026 for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation.
To hear its songs beyond the horizon.
God Save Birmingham is a brutal, physics-based medieval zombie survival game that, given a unique Project Zomboid in 3D premise, the game is set in a painstakingly recreated 14th century Birmingham, England. Despite being developed by a team in Seoul, the developers have gone to great lengths to research the era, using maps and historical records from the Museum of Birmingham to reconstruct the landmarks. You play as the lone survivor in a market town where the Black Death has turned out to be an undead plague, forcing you to navigate a world that is both muddy and historically authentic. The gameplay emphasizes realistic, high-stakes melee combat, where players use improvised tools like sickles and pitchforks to lop off limbs and survive desperate encounters. After focusing the majority on cozy games such as My Time in Portia, Pathea Game takes a huge switch to a more serious theme in The Godslayer. The game is set within the breathtaking Eastern-inspired steampunk metropolis of Zhu. It follows the story of Chang, a gifted elemancer fueled by vengeance after his family was slaughtered by godlike rulers known as the Celestials during a catastrophic event called the Godfall. Built on Unreal Engine 5, the gameplay emphasizes fluid, third-person combat and a highly customizable elemental system, drawing comparisons to Avatar: The Last Airbender, where players can combine fire, water, earth, metal, and wood to trigger dynamic interactions, such as creating steam or obstructing enemies with terrain. Still without a release date yet, but it confirmed will come for PC, PS5, and Xbox XS. The Bustling World is an extremely ambitious open-world sandbox RPG set in a meticulously detailed version of ancient China, while promised a limitless of freedom by blending life simulation, 4X strategy, and classic RPG mechanic into a single experiences. Players can choose to live a quiet life as a merchant or farmer, or rise to power by establishing a regime, managing intricate diplomacy, and commanding armies in large-scale siege battles. A standout feature is its deep NPC AI system, where every inhabitant has their own social life, family ties, and evolving personality that reacts dynamically to player actions, such as seeking revenge if a relative is harmed. Currently in development for a PC release with a release date still to be announced. So, which game that catches your eye? Or you have another favorite game that outside the list? Please let me know in the comment below. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you in the next video.